Week number four's daily fantasy football slate sets it to be an interesting one because there are some good games to stack on this slate, but a lot of the quarterbacks in those good games have question marks, whether it be volume, whether it be their team's willingness to throw the football, whether it be matchup. There are some interesting things to consider across this slate. What we're going to do for today is break down those quarterbacks, break down those games, but also take a couple of process-based looks at how we should play things, especially early on in the year, for daily fantasy football, getting you set to win some money on Sunday. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Joined here, as always, by Brandon Gadula. He is the managing editor for numberFire.com. Brandon, we are on to week number 4. How are you doing today?
Good, but this week is it's been problematic for me, I think. We do player picks at the end of this podcast. It's not even that many. It's 2 quarterbacks, 2 tight ends, 3 running backs and receivers. And I took over an hour to figure out who to recommend. And it's not even because I'm so... it's not that I think people are going to just be locked into my loves. It's just, it's so hard for me to whittle it down to the top few guys, specifically at quarterback, like you said. So that's kind of where I'm at with this slate. And I hope discussing it with you helps me learn some things.
Well, I'm in the same spot, so I don't think I'll actually be able to help you too much there.
But sometimes just like talking through it, you're like, okay, yeah. And the more and more we kind of go back and forth, it's like, I'm gonna feel like a big dummy if I don't play a lot of Kyler at an $8,200 salary.
Yeah, and I think that's probably where I'll wind up. But I think that there are a lot of things to consider here, especially because we don't know. It's hard enough to predict defensive strength in general. Can we predict it after 3 weeks? It's hard enough to know how pass heavy a team will be in neutral scripts, stuff like that. There are a lot of unknowns still, despite the fact we have data from across 3 weeks already. So I think there's a lot to juggle for today. We'll break down injuries, games we want to stack, our top plays each position, and again, some process-based stuff throughout the podcast for today. But first, a quick reminder, we do have a listener league once again. You can find that and enter that by going to FanDuel.com/league/listener league. Again, FanDuel.com/league/listener league. That link will be the URL will be the same each week. So I think they're doing it every Monday, putting the contest up. So FanDuel.com/league/listener league to get entered for the week 4 listener league. $5 entry, 3 entries max. There is no rake. FanDuel very likely to lose money on this contest. So if you want a smart way to play DFS, check out the listener league, FanDuel.com/league/listener league for that. Hey, football fans, FanDuel is giving you the chance to bet on week 4 of the NFL season. All you got to do is go to FanDuel Sportsbook and download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Place a 3+ leg same game parlay on any NFL week 4 game. If your bet loses, get a refund and site credit. Max refund is $10. Bet on week 4 of the NFL with FanDuel by heading over to FanDuel Sportsbook today and placing a risk-free same-game parlay. Must be 21 plus and present in Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, or West Virginia. Refund issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. Max refund $10. Restrictions apply. See full terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Same game parlay available for multiple sports in all states on mobile and web. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. For confidential help in Michigan, 1-800-270-7117. In Tennessee, call the red line at 1-800-889-9789. In West Virginia, 1-800-GAMBLER.net, or in Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. Let's take a look at the key injuries impacting this week 4 NFL DFS main slate. Starting off with running back Dalvin Cook. Got in a limited practice on Wednesday. Sounds like he is anticipating he'll return this week. So do you worry at all about Dalvin off the injury, or is it back to status quo for him?
I would think status quo or enough of status quo. Running back this week is, we have, I think, situations we got to monitor with some other running backs. But if Dalvin's a full go or, is practicing in full by Friday, then absolutely. If he's Still a bit limited. I think he'd still be a top tier play because we don't really see Dalvin play and be limited unless it's like a blowout and then they don't play him a lot in the fourth. So I wouldn't be that concerned. What about you?
I'm not either. And I think that like Madison played well last week and was really good, but also like you look at his success rate numbers and it wasn't like like we got to keep using this guy type thing. And Mike Zimmer said a lot of times Dalvin Cook is the reason this offense works. So I think that if he's in there, he will be playing well. I would like to see him removed from the injury report on Friday. That'd give me a pretty big boost of confidence. Like I would still feel good if we get like the 11:45 p.m. Saturday Shefty bomb. Like, hey, Dalvin Cook's good to go. I'd still feel good then, but I'd feel a lot better if he's not on the injury report on Friday. Other running back injury here is Darrell Henderson. Got in a limited practice Wednesday. Sounds like he will be able to play this week. If he doesn't, we talked about this on Monday. We would like Sony Michel at $5,800. So if there's no Darrell Henderson, be in on Sony Michel. But let's assume Henderson does play. He had a good role the first 2 weeks, but he got hurt. And that was kind of the concern they seemed to have with Henderson was that he can't carry a full load and stay healthy. So would you trust him? Would you trust Michel or just avoid this backfield entirely if Henderson goes?
So I almost did the same thing. Just spoiler alert, in my player picks, I have either Vikings running back, whoever. If Dalv plays, it's Dalv. If not, it's Madison. I almost did that with the Rams, and then I realized that I don't feel nearly the same, which is, I get it. Like I don't feel the same about Darrell Henderson's role as Dalvin Cook's, but the thing for me is Sony Michel didn't play. Like he did not play basically at all when Henderson was healthy. So that's not a huge vote of confidence for his role once Henderson returns. But again, so like I'm not going to play Sony Michel if Henderson plays because I think he earned more work.
Correct.
Because of how little he played before the injury.
Correct.
But also I'm not going to presume that Henderson just goes back to the 90% snap rate. So I might, if Henderson plays, I might not play either of them.
I won't play either if he plays. I think that we've got other options at running back. It's not a great week for running back this week, kind of like last week where it is kind of thin. But like there are enough guys I feel good about where I would just cross them off. So if Henderson goes, I'm avoiding that backfield. If not, let's go with Sony Michel. Andy Dalton got in a limited practice on Wednesday due to a knee issue. Justin Fields was a full practice with a hand issue. We don't know yet who will play. Matt Nagy left the door open for Nick Foles to start. Sounds like he's backtracked on that sense. So how are you viewing the Bears offense if Fields starts versus if it's Dalton?
Well, I don't have any interest. If you have 3 or 2.5 quarterbacks, you don't have one. Although I guess Fields might be half quarterback right now too. Dalton's probably like 3/4 of a quarter. So I don't know. I don't know what the math is there, but they don't really have one quarterback. So I have like no interest in that offense, but you and I went back and forth for a while on David Montgomery on Monday's podcast.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you where you are with him now that we kind of know that there's not a whole lot of certainty at quarterback here.
I mean, that wasn't the main factor. The main factor was good workload, bad defense. I would say if we're looking in that range, he's behind Aaron Jones, Antonio Gibson, and DeAndre Swift. I will have Nick Chubb in game stacks. So like I might not wind up getting there. I still think that it's like a justifiable place to go. I know we argued about it for like 16 minutes just for me to say like,
but you set his baseline initially at 25 and then you went to bet
joking.
Me at 20.
It was a joke.
You were pretty adamant if that was just a joke, but
I mean, it wasn't. Do you think I actually thought he'd get 25 points? Like, is that serious?
I mean, with the way that you
So I think that Montgomery is a person to consider. The problem is
he's a person of interest.
Person of interest. The problem is I have more interest in guys around him. So I would need to be pretty spread out at running back to get there. And I don't think I want to do that. So I still think that he's justifiable. I just, and I can't get to Mooney. I can't get to Robinson with the questions at quarterback right now. I think it's kind of Montgomery or bust on the Bears side of things.
Yeah. I mean, We got Swift. It's 7,700. That's a high salary, but they want to get him the ball more and more. We've seen him get double-digit
His role's
targets.
already been good, like for DFS.
Aaron Jones, you and I both like. Antonio Gibson, we both like. I like Zeke at 7,000. I hate the matchup for Saquon, so I'm probably not going to get a whole lot of Montgomery myself.
Yeah. Maybe I'll come around to it, but I think like even that same game, Swift is better.
It's one of those where we know we're not going
to.
You're going to stack
that game. I was joking. I want to make clear that was a joke.
Who even? It'd be Montgomery and Hawkinson, I guess.
Montgomery and Swift.
Oh yeah. Well, the running back stack is
that works.
A little abnormal.
Fine. I don't care. It works. It pops up in perfect lineups. So who cares?
Yeah.
Open your mind. Open your mind. Close-minded Brandon. How dare you? Julio Jones and AJ Brown both missed practice on Wednesday for the Titans. I think Brown's going to miss. Julio limited in the second half last week due to injury. They were pretty coy about it, but it sounds like he actually was hurt. So let's assume that Julio plays, which might not happen, while Brown sits. Actually, let's talk about both scenarios. Like if Julio sits too, how are even the Titans offense against the Jets based on the health of their receivers?
Big downgrade, massive downgrade. I'll say this probably I'll try to say this for the last time of the season, but this is not NBA DFS. Guys are not going to get those same opportunities. We saw Tennessee's pass rate go down pretty drastically last week.
Yeah.
The efficiency is going to be worse. That hurts Derrick Henry from a touchdown expectation standpoint. You might think they're going to give the ball to Derrick Henry 40 times, and they might, but they might have like minimal red zone trips as well. So that's a little bit hard to want to get to. Now, I'm not talking myself out of Derrick Henry entirely.
No.
This is a new Brandon. He is not going to advocate fading Derrick Henry outright, but there's a real opportunity where he just doesn't score again and is just okay.
Yeah, and I think that's why, although we're not like looking to be off of Derrick Henry, it's okay to be underweight on him in tournaments because I'm assuming people are just going to go there because of the Jets matchup. I'm looking at projected roster rates right now, and I don't think they're accurate. Not going to say the site because I don't want to put them on blast. But Derrick Henry is very low, so I don't think that'll stick. I'm just going to close that tab.
I would just think, like, doesn't it make sense that people would say, well, if they don't have AJ Brown or Julio, they're just going to lean on Derrick Henry?
Yeah, which
is true, yeah. But that's not necessarily good.
He's a touchdown dependent player, not as much as he has been previously, because he's averaged 152.7 yards from scrimmage per game. So that's like 15 FanDuel points with no receptions and no touchdowns, which is stupid. So he's not as touchdown dependent as he used to be, but you still want tutties for $10,200. So I would say, like, if you give me a single entry lineup and that's the one I'm playing, he's probably not in there. And I think that's okay. Like, I'm going to use him, but I don't think I need him for single entry.
Yeah.
What if Julio plays? Would you go to him or no?
He was limited last week. I think we have, first of all, that's just a game that I don't have a lot of interest in. And by a lot, I mean, no interest. Like, they're gonna beat the Jets pretty well.
Sorry. Joking. Need to make clear again. Really doesn't come across. I'm joking.
Well, I mean, it's believable enough, but do they really need to run out Julio in week 4 when he's already injured against the Jets to win? Probably not. And his salary is $6,700. That's high enough where you can't really afford like a 4-point game.
Okay, let me see here. 2-5. Trying to see if there's. Don't bet the Jets money line. Just
I knew you were cooking up something.
No, it's not good. Don't do it. I did want to check though. At least don't. Do it. There's no value. It's bad.
No, I don't think I could. I don't care who they're playing. They could be playing the Washington Generals. Is that team that the Globetrotters always play?
Oh, man.
Come on. It's not like that. That's a pretty It's the Generals. I think they're from Washington, but
it's basketball. I don't know. I got nothing.
I wish I did, but exhibition basketball. But yeah, even against the Generals, I don't know if I'd bet the Jets.
I do need these Zach Wilson dynasty shares to step up though. So let's get it going, bud. Let's step up this week. Corey Davis revenge game. Let's go. Steelers could have Deontay Johnson back this week. He was limited in Wednesday's practice. Juju Smith-Schuster is day-to-day with a rib injury, so it sounds like he may be able to go as well. So possible they get both guys here for this game. How does it impact your view of Najee Harris? How does it impact your view of Aaron Jones, et cetera, in this game?
I have had I didn't really even, so I don't want to say this like, it'll make me sound like I'm unprepared, but I didn't really get to this game in terms of like detailed notes because I virtually sort by over under and kind of go from there. This game didn't jump out from that standpoint. That's probably telling me a lot. Now, I'm still okay with Aaron Jones for sure. I don't know if I'm going to get to Najee Harris at that elevated salary coming off the massive target game. I don't anticipate that he will get 19 targets again. And he just hasn't done a whole lot with those opportunities. So we're going to need to see an insane reversal of his efficiency for that volume to like destroy us. I think his rushing success rate's like horrifyingly low.
It's 15%. It's half. So bad. It's half of the second lowest qualified running back.
That's so
literally
bad.
Half. Yeah.
So like we're banking on big touchdown regression from him, which is possible.
Yeah.
But the yardage efficiency is not really there to make the workload that scary.
Would having Deontay and Juju make you more interested in the Green Bay passing game? Like, would you feel okay about like Devontae Adams there or?
Yeah, I think so. Adams is someone that's kind of sneaking up on me here. Not that he's sneaking up on anyone, but there are a ton of good receivers this week
and
there are a lot of good games. So it's like, hey, I don't want to forget about Devontae because he could lead this slate in fantasy points. That's not shocking, but I'm just worried, enough about the Steelers here where I'm like, I'm probably not going to talk myself into that. It might be more of even like a Stephon Diggs where I talk myself into a game that I don't like so much.
Yeah. Green Bay projected 15th in offensive efficiency for me. Pittsburgh 20th. That's not as bad as it may seem, but it's still not an ideal game. And there are better options for sure. Elijah Mitchell got in a limit, or Eli Mitchell got in a limited practice on Wednesday, which means he could return this week off a shoulder injury. Trey Sermon didn't play all that well on Sunday night. Does that make you tempted to take a swipe at Mitchell in a stackable game if he's able to return or no?
It could. His salary is only $5,600. I would say that he's game stack dependent. Where I'm not really going to play Eli Mitchell in one-offs. Yeah. I don't think. So it's probably one of those where I just kind of build lineups and say, you know what, Seattle, San Francisco, they're going to put up like 60 combined points, and it's okay if Eli Mitchell's in there and doesn't totally erupt because it's just that game environment kind of hits at 5,600. That's a little bit more justifiable. I know you and I are always hard on value backs making sure that they can actually reach a high ceiling. It's a little bit different if it's kind of at least stacked within a full game where I'm kind of getting the benefits of the other guys who actually go off, the higher salary guys.
But I would also say that I think 49ers backs have the ability to do that, like the ability to have the 120 and 2.
Yeah.
So especially against the Seattle defense, I think that's pretty doable. So if he's like a full practice on Friday, removed from the injury report, I would have some. I think that's justifiable. Given how much you like that game.
Would you play him kind of outside of stacks, like without any Seahawks?
I wouldn't play him without mini stacks. Like if I use him, I want DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett in there. That's the way I'd view it.
Freddie Swain.
It's like that Magic Johnson gif. I'm not going to be there. Not going to be there, man. Both Darius Slayton and Sterling Shepard missed practice Wednesday due to hamstring injuries. Opens up volume for the Giants, but they're also in a terrible game with the Saints. Could lower their offensive efficiency. Are you crossing off the Giants' offense this week?
I think so. The only one I'm really considering is Saquon. The salary is still too low for the workload, but the matchup is not ideal. And the overall game environment, not particularly good. Although it is in a dome, which is something I'll talk about. But
love a good dome.
Yeah.
But Zeke's in a dome. Antonio Gibson's in a dome. We've got guys around there. I mean,
Dalv.
Yeah. So, no. Chuba's in a dome. I think that we got better options for this week. I think that offense could just collapse. So, oh well. We had our good run on Saquon. We'll go back eventually, but this is not the place to do so, I don't think.
I think the good news is that he's probably not going to have a big game here.
Yeah. So we can get him at lower roster rates later on.
That, and also his salary shouldn't spike.
I hope. Because I'd like to go back. I just don't want to go back in this game. Okay, so that's the injury section for right now. Let's talk about what the bookmakers are saying about this slate. The highest total on this slate is in Los Angeles for the Rams versus the Cardinals. Total is 54.5 for this game. It was 55, down half a point. The spread opened at the Rams -6, but it got bet down to being the Rams -4.5. So the public thinks this game will be close, and that's what we want for stacking. So do you see any paths to failure for this game, or are we good to just load up and go nuts here?
I have this one fourth in average pace with like between 20 and 80% win probability, third in pass rate, and those same constraints. So that's awesome. I think the path to this one not going off is it's still a divisional game. That's always a little bit more scary than otherwise, even if it's the first time around. Second time around is way scarier. And I think the real path for this one to bust, not from like an over-under standpoint, is kind of from a market share standpoint.
Yeah.
Because we've got Kyler, who we want to play. The Arizona running backs, I don't have any interest in. The market share, the receiving market shares for Arizona are so balanced that it's hard even to talk myself into a ton of DeAndre Hopkins. Everyone's just basically floating between like an 11 and an 18% target share in this offense. That's really hard. So, and then for the Rams, the running backs might kind of cancel each other out, and Cooper Kupp might eventually not score twice. Robert Woods is kind of dust. So like this game could easily go over and kind of have minimal, huge fantasy impact if that doesn't get concentrated within this game.
It was really upsetting when I realized my favorite stacking partner for Kyler might be AJ Green. Like, yeah, it's so, I don't want that. No one wants that, but like,
no.
I mean, Christian Kirk will probably see a lot of Jalen Ramsey since he's basically like a slot corner right now. Hopkins is banged up, not getting his usual market shares. Rondale Moore, I think, will get an increase in routes run this week due to the potential script here. Like last week was not the script for Rondale. I know they got down a bit in that game, but like that was not the spot for him. So like the best stacking partner might be AJ Green, which is pretty crazy. And then you can run it back with Cooper Kupp. Like if you do Kyler, AJ Green, Cooper Kupp, you're fine. Like you can make that work from a salary perspective. But like, I think that is a legitimate concern about trying to find the optimal ways to stack it, because there are at least like concerns with every guy in Arizona's side except for Kyler.
Yeah. I mean, like I'm starting to kind of look at games with teams like where market shares aren't fantastic and just be like, this game's scoring a lot of points, but I don't feel like there was anyone that I even needed to have, which kind of is scary because we just want to target high totaled games, but high totaled games with diversified offenses can kind of bust even if they go over. That's kind of where I am with this game. So it's definitely not my favorite to stack.
Yeah.
And with Kupp's salary being what it is, we would need some value to bring it back with, which we have available to us with Arizona. But like he's just not going to score or not score twice.
Right.
And at 8,600, if he gives us like 15, that's.
Higbee. I think Higbee's still in play given his salary, given Like he isn't the best role, but like for a tight end, it's a fine role.
Yeah, but anyone who's, I mean, if
I
you're
feel
not
a lot better about the Rams side. I don't want to nitpick them. I'm okay
yeah,
nitpicking Arizona. One thing I would say though is that if we get DeAndre Hopkins in a full practice on Friday at $7,600, I can be more okay with his market share concerns because he's been banged up the past 2 games. So
yeah,
if we get a full practice from DeAndre Hopkins, my like optimal stack here will probably be Kyler, Nuke, Higbee, and that I think can work.
yeah, and so it's a matter of, okay, on paper, what we have through 3 games says DeAndre Hopkins not an
He's a
amazing
dust ball.
play.
Yeah.
If we say he's healthy and he becomes Nuke and gets that 25 even, but like maybe 28, 30% target share, that's kind of when you're buying low.
Yeah.
Do they need my fear is he's not 100%, even if he gets in a full practice, that doesn't qualify to me as 100% healthy. Do they need to give him a 30% target share if they have AJ Green somehow relevant again?
I don't think they
Christian
need to give him
Kirk.
30%. I think that it would be better than what it's been though, and like he can
Sure.
pay off at his salary. So like I wouldn't feel like, oh, I'm going to DeAndre Hopkins in cash. He did
Yeah.
run 33 routes last week, so he was pretty full in the game itself. Just didn't do a whole lot. So,
But that goes back to, now he might play a ton, which he has been playing a lot. He's run 95% of the routes this year. But if he's not getting the volume, it's the only thing that would really change is his health.
yeah.
So if he's still,
But again,
up,
it's a week removed. I think that like very likely when I'm filling up my Kyler stacks on Sunday, I will be skewing towards Hopkins once again, despite the really, really disappointing usage so far. The total for the Browns versus Vikings has come down from the open, but I think it still sets up well for DFS. Total of 51.5, open to 52.5. Browns are 2.5 point favorites. There's been a lot of movement on this number. It was Browns -1.5, then -2.5, then -2, now back to 2.5. So a lot of action on this game, it seems like. I love this game. There are concerns given that both teams kind of want to run, but that was also the case for Seattle, Minnesota last week. And I think just the defense in Minnesota is conducive to shootouts. And the offense is conducive to shootouts too. I don't think I want to use either quarterback here, but I really like this game from a stacking perspective. Are you as high in this game as I
am? I'm fairly high on it for sure. Mostly the Minnesota side, although I don't think I'll play Kirk Cousins. So that's kind of a tough sell there. But obviously we talked about Dalvin and Madison already. Justin Jefferson or Adam Thielen, totally fine. And then on the way back, it's Odell Beckham right now. His workload's amazing. Had 51% of the team's air yards last week. I would be more open to Baker than I would be to Kirk Cousins, I think. Even though the Cousins is at home. And I never know what to do with the running backs for Cleveland, but Kareem Hunt did get a kind of a bump in receiving without Jarvis Landry, which is noteworthy.
Yeah, I think that is like, if you want to justify Hunt, that could be the angle. I would say that Nick Chubb works for game stacks. Like I think if I'm ranking out bring back options, it's Odell 1, Chubb 2, and I think it's pretty comfortably Chubb 2. Despite the fact he gets bad usage, he's still averaging 94.3 yards to scrimmage per game, which is 1, 2, 4, 5th on the main slate. It's 5th on the main slate behind Antonio Gibson, DeAndre Swift, Derrick Henry, and Dalvin Cook in each guy's most relevant sample. So I think that he works. He's got 35% of the red zone chances. So like, it's not a good role, but again, as we discussed with Eli Mitchell, there are paths to him paying off because he's so freaking good. And it's such a good scheme. So I think Chubb works for bringbacks after Odell. I think that, again, I'm probably not going to go to either quarterback here, but I feel good about the non-quarterbacks, really good about the non-quarterbacks in this game.
Yeah. I don't know if we should ever bring up our bet because it involves one of the quarterbacks in this game.
Okay. So I was on Slack last night. I was trying to do like my player picks, and Brandon sends me a screenshot with Taylor bleeping Heineke as his second love at quarterback. And I threatened to quit. And what was your I know you came off of what was the rationale here?
He hasn't been that horrible once you adjust for opponents. It's a great game situation. It's the fastest game of the week. It's in a dome. It's against Atlanta. He has an obvious stack candidate. or two with Terry McLaurin and Logan Thomas. He can run the ball a little bit. And
Baker runs just as much as Taylor Heineke does.
Sure, but this wasn't initially a Heineke versus Baker thing.
I know.
It was, I think Taylor Heineke's justifiable this week at 7,400, and I could kind of nitpick almost every other high salary quarterback to the point where I wasn't in love with many of them. And that's why I thought maybe he was in play.
No, he's not. So our bet is, are you going to take this bet?
Sure,
Baker
I'll take
Mayfield?
it.
Okay, I have Baker Mayfield. You have Taylor Heineke. I'm not using Baker for DFS, but I'd rather use him than Heineke. Like Hunter Renfro's had a fine role this year. But my previous question was, would you rather get hit by a bus or use Hunter Renfro in DFS? I think that might be Heineke. Actually, it's probably Daniel Jones more than, I know he runs now, but I think that
the ranges of outcomes on Heineke and Mayfield for me are virtually identical.
Except one of them is good at football.
Is Baker Mayfield actually good at football?
Yes.
Okay.
As you will see on Sunday when he throws his 5th touchdown to Odell, you'll see that Baker's great. I can't justify thinking about Heineke when I could pay $400 more to get to Dak Prescott. Don't care about the matchup. Russ is $400 more. Fine matchup there.
300.
What?
300.
Oh, Heineke's 74. I thought he's 73. Oh my goodness, it's even worse. Matthew Stafford is $400 more.
Yeah, I know. That's how salaries break out on FanDuel. But
brutal.
You give me a quarterback in that kind of game environment, it's appealing whenever other guys have some question marks.
No. This is better though than our Case Keenum versus Josh Allen bet when Josh Allen is a rookie. So at least we've got that going for us. Because Baker's actually good. One of those quarterbacks is actually good, which was not the case for that time. Anything else in this game? Do you have a preference between the Vikings guys? I think Dalvin is one if he's healthy.
Yeah.
And then I put Justin Jefferson too, because I'm just going to keep beating my head against the wall.
Yeah. I was going to say the same thing. Jefferson over Thielen because I'm a moron.
26% target share for Jefferson compared to 22% for Thielen. Downfield work, 44% for Jefferson versus 22% for Thielen. Jefferson actually has as many red zone targets as Thielen does. Just hasn't converted. Okay, so Thielen has had 16 touchdowns this year. Let me read you his FanDuel point totals, despite all the touchdowns. 25.7, that hurts. 12.9 and 14. He has failed to eclipse 15 FanDuel points twice, despite scoring touchdowns. I don't feel like he can burn me unless he gets 2 touchdowns.
Which, I mean, he could.
Which he could,
plays,
for sure.
But, I mean, at this rate, no, I can't even make that comparison because Kupp's roll is way better.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at that salary range, Thielen is $200 less than DK Metcalf. Just look at those two dudes and tell me which one you'd rather use at the same salary. Amari Cooper, 76. I'd rather have Amari Cooper. CeeDee Lamb is in that range, so I'm not using Thielen. I know it's going to burn me. I go in knowing he's going to catch touchdowns and make me tilt into oblivion. But even when he scores, it doesn't matter as much because the yardage is so bad. So,
yeah,
we'll see. But just catch a touchdown for once, Justin Jefferson. Make us proud. We also have a tight spread on a high total for the Seahawks and the 49ers. Seahawks favored by 3, the 49ers favored by 3. Total at 52. The Seahawks defense, absolute nightmare. The 49ers should be able to move the ball here. But the Seahawks offense has had super low play volume all year, which has kept us from getting complete eruptions. They've been good, but they've not been great due to play volume. So where does this game rank for you in terms of stacking?
I haven't ranked out on my games yet, but this one is 9th in pace and 10th in pass rate on plays where pre-snap win probability was 20 to 80%. So that's not great. That's kind of the lone blemish I have, though. I get another slight concern I have is just that Russell Wilson has on the ball a ton. He's running 3.7 times per game for 10.7 yards. So he's you and I are very strongly prioritizing running quarterbacks. Russ doesn't quite, he kind of fits that, but not really. So for me with Russ, it feels like the way that he goes off is when he gets to that 4th touchdown or that third touchdown with like 350 passing yards. But I mean, I'm just never surprised if he goes. I mean, I just feel like you copy and paste like 280 yards and 2.5 touchdowns for Russ with that range of, being able to reach 4 touchdowns. But I don't know. Like, I still like him a lot, but
yeah,
if I can't love him entirely, then I'm lower on these games because I'm definitely not playing quarterbacks on the other side of this one.
I think the crazy thing about the Seahawks offense, they've had one bad half in each game so far, but Russ still has 0.33 passing net expected points per dropback, which is a very good number.
Yeah.
So like if they can put a full game together, he could be at like 0.50, in which case like you're cooking even on lower volume. So I think it's similar to DeAndre Hopkins where we haven't seen it yet, but I think that upside is still in there. And so I'm okay going to Russ and being pretty high on him. And as a result of that, I think this is a good game for stacking, and it might be my favorite because I like Russ. So to me, you get Russ, pair him with either Lockett or Metcalf, favoring Metcalf for me personally, and then you bring it back with Debo, bring it back with, I think Ayuk's in play this week, and I think that Kittle's in play. He's banged up right now, but that's fine. I think that because there's a quarterback I like, it's a game I like, there are logical stacking partners. This game, I like the Vikings-Browns one more, but I just don't have a quarterback there. So I like that game more for stacking, but this is number 2, and it has a quarterback in it that I do like.
I think I'd probably go with... See, like, this is the issue, and this is why I ended up on Heineke, is you can find issues with all of these games.
Yeah.
For like Kansas City, Philly, it's who do we bring back with the Eagles? I have Washington, Atlanta as like I have like this rudimentary just sort of game stack score that's actually number 1 because of the pace and pass rate and stuff. We obviously you're not going to play either quarterback. I might play only one. You couldn't pay me to play Matt Ryan right now. So Matt Ryan probably going to return to his old form. So I think Cleveland, Minnesota, like I can nitpick all these games. So it's really hard for me to rank them.
Yeah. It's not a week like last week where I felt like really go like, okay, this game is the best one on the board, stuff like that.
Yeah. And so that's why I think the more and more I talk about this slate, because this is why it took me so long to narrow down my loves. Right. The more I talk about it, the more I'm realizing and I say this with golf a lot, like whenever I don't have a strong preference or it's like a major and we have all these options, I'm just going to kind of wait and see.
Yeah.
And then whoever's getting overlooked, I'll just go there because why not?
Yeah.
Like I don't need to be stubborn and force myself to prioritize anyone who I don't really want to prioritize. I'll just try to see who's going to be less popular.
Yeah. I think that can work. And I think that this might be a week to do that. So I think that is a fair way to view things. Okay, let's take a look at some trends we are focusing on for this week. This is not like the Steelers play well against the Packers type thing. It's more so like process-based stuff or usage-based stuff. Trends is a very bad connotation in betting, so that's why I'm clarifying.
Oh, yeah.
It's process-based stuff in terms of usage, in terms of stuff that works and does not. So you are looking at the fantasy production in dome games. I love domes, and there are some games with some potential rain this week, so I love domes even more. What did you see when you went back through the data here?
Yeah, we're going to start getting worse weather, more wind. Actually, I don't know if it gets windier throughout the season, but it feels like it does. More wind, more rain, just worse, like colder conditions. And then sometimes we just have dome games where it's nice and controlled. We have 5 games this week on the main slate in a dome or a game with a retractable roof. Dome games are the Giants and Saints, which I don't think either of us are really on despite the dome angle here. The Browns and Vikings, the Cardinals and Rams, and then games with retractable roofs, Washington and the Falcons, and then the Panthers and Cowboys.
It's not really a retractable roof for the Falcons game. It's more of like a kaleidoscope that kind of opens sometimes. Roof is generous.
I just went off of I think Wikipedia.
It's a weird looking thing, man.
Now
it looks like a butt from the sky. We'll say it. We'll say what was left unsaid previously. It looks like a butt.
Okay.
You're welcome.
3 things to keep in mind as I talk about some data. I'm looking at performance relative to numberFire's projections in the past. numberFire's projections have been long-term really good. They're off by about 0.2 points since 2018 on a player level basis. They're just very good long-term. So go numberFire. Despite that, 42% of players have gone over their projection, which I think is explained most easily by you can be projected for partial touchdowns. You cannot score a partial touchdown. So that's going to come into play a lot. And 3, I'm going to be looking at performance against those projections, which does account for players who are good going into good environments. They will be projected for more points. This is not just based on like it accounts for some context there. So I like this approach. Now, if you look at quarterback ones projected in a game from 2018 to 2020,
you mean quarterback ones in terms of highest projected quarterback, correct?
Highest projected quarterback for their team based on numberFire's pregame projections. They went over their projection 47% of the time. In outdoor games, it's 45%. In indoor games, it's 51%. Passers underperformed projections by 0.6 points on average outdoors and overperformed by 0.3 points indoors. That's small, but it's significant, especially with generally higher projections in dome games, which are generally higher totaled, have better overall expectations. Quarterbacks were 32% likely to have a 300-yard passing game indoors versus 24% outdoors. They're also 52% likely to go over their yardage total projections indoors compared to 44% outdoors. So even with that context, quarterbacks, which drive basically games entirely, they perform really well in dome games. That they just dominate how fantasy points get accrued. We talked about this with the Titans, and if they're not moving the ball, Derrick Henry's not going to have as many scoring chances. If quarterbacks are moving the ball, players have better scoring chances. Running backs were basically unchanged, so not a whole lot there, despite the fact that we should expect better scoring odds in these games. But wide receiver ones, again, guys projected for the most fantasy points on their teams, average 12.8 fantasy points indoors, FanDuel points, so half PPR, 12.8 indoors, 11.3 outdoors, which is a 1.5 point difference. That's pretty significant, especially with the higher projections indoors at 12.9 on average and 11.9 outdoors. They basically are just more likely to get to that 100-yard arbitrary cutoff at 28% indoors and 18% outdoors. That does trickle down a little bit more to wide receiver 2s and 3s, but again, we see better yardage in these games, at least compared to expectations. So honestly, this is not groundbreaking, but it's important to keep in mind, especially in a week where I'm sitting here looking at like all these games. I kind of like some of them, kind of can't figure out. That's another reason why I thought Taylor Heineke was more in play, just because of a potentially controlled environment for some of these games. So
Baker's also indoors.
Baker's indoors short. Yes, I know that. But again, I wasn't looking at Baker initially. I was looking at Taylor Heineke.
Sure.
So I think that it's very, very important to keep in mind that we should love dome games. Again, this is not groundbreaking. Other people will say it, but it's nice to see the data support what we all think is true. So I always bump up dome games. I don't think I talk about that enough, but how do you kind of handle this? I know you're big into wind, but specifically with domes, what do you
think the key thing that you mentioned is how they perform relative to projections, because that's what people operate off of is projections. And if they outperform projections indoors, we should bump up guys indoors even more so than they're already being bumped up. So I think that's a great thing for all these dome games. So specifically, I love it for Kyler because he's the one quarterback I like outside of Dak who is indoors. So Kyler gets a bump up there. I would say it makes me feel better about that Rams or the Vikings Browns game. Makes me feel better about the Cowboys despite a tough matchup, which you'll be touching on later as well. So I think it really does. Maybe it helps me like whittle things down. Like maybe I should just be higher on Kyler and Dak and maybe not as high on Russ, who is outdoors, stuff like that. I'm not going to be off of Russ. I still like Russ, still will be very high on Russ, but like it does help smooth things out for Kyler and Dak, even though they have concerns with regards to matchup. So I think that's the major thing for me is giving me a bit more safety with two guys I like, despite having some red flags around them.
Yeah, I think if nothing else, tiebreakers
Sure.
is kind of how you can view this. And also, eventually we'll see like a dome game with a 56-point total and everything else is at like 50 or below. And it's like, yeah, that's going to kind of, everyone's going to play that one. But it's these games where, like, again, maybe Calvin Ridley, Terry McLaurin mini stacks are something that has a lot of appeal, given we're not super into the quarterbacks. Again, I talked myself out of Heineke to some degree. I still think he's a relatively...
You got the wrong mini stack, though. It's Cordero with McLaurin. Come on.
But, like, you know, eventually...
The best quarterback in that game, Cordero Patterson.
I'm starting to get more and more open to that game in particular with, like, the mini stack angle.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that much is known.
I think the mini stacks work pretty well there because we know where we want to go to. That helps a lot there. My first trend is talking about the Eagles offense because I always want to use Kansas City like as a rule because they're great. They're Kansas City. The problem is they're facing the Eagles, and I need to decide A, if the Eagles can keep up, and B, with whom I'd want to run it back with if I do decide to stack here. And the keeping up portion is tough because Kansas City is favored by 7. My numbers say they should be favored by 9.5 points, in part because I have home field being worth just 1.5 points, and I think that's less than the books have it at. So let's say the Chiefs here were favored by 9.5 rather than 7. My interest level in this game would be a bit more muted, and that's mostly due to Philadelphia's offense. They rank 21st in projected offensive efficiency for me this week, despite the very good matchup. That's behind Pittsburgh, Washington, New Orleans, other teams I'm not super jazzed about this week. So I do worry a bit about them keeping pace. The good thing is they do play kind of fast. Kansas City tends to keep its foot on the gas even when they're up pretty big. So Kansas City is fine, but downgraded a bit in what may be a less competitive game. For bringbacks, it's tough. Miles Sanders can lose some work in passing situations. He has just 11% of the team's red zone chances this year. That's a woof. Absolute woof there. Devontae Smith can work. He has 22% of the overall targets, 50% of the deep targets, but he's not catching the long balls. He's caught just 1 of 7 deep targets, and that was an 18-yard touchdown against Atlanta. I don't want to use Jalen Reagor because he stinks. Quez Watkins doesn't get enough volume. Same thing with the tight ends. So Smith is like the best bring-back option, but even he's flawed. So I'm having a tough time with this one, Brandon. How are you feeling about the Chiefs offense here, and how are you feeling about the Eagles?
Believe it or not, I do like the Chiefs this week.
Bold.
I don't really worry about that. They're 1-2. They need wins. Andy Reid's playing the Eagles. He himself is playing the Eagles.
Yeah. He's going to suit up at quarterback this week.
And
he's gonna be punter, everything, just like that old footage. He's gonna
punt,
be the
pass, and kick.
everything.
Yeah. I would worry more if they were like 3-0, and it's like they don't have to go out there and do anything, but they need wins. It's not time to panic. They have a really easy schedule opening up, but they're not going to want to fall to 1-3. They're going to have a lot of things planned up to get Tyreek Hill more involved, regardless of the coverage. He has 11 targets over the past 2 games, which is, he's kind of been like at 11 targets per game last year. It's like he got crazy good volume. So I don't feel bad about them. The concern obviously is the bring back, as you touched on. And I think honestly for me is just Devontae Smith. If I'm not including Jalen Hurts in that, where I'll have Jalen Hurts plus like Kelsey and Tyreek Hill, but it's Devontae Smith because of the downfield work. Eventually he's got to catch some of those. It just has to happen. He's not AJ Green last year. And I kind of considered Zach Ertz at 4,700, but the way that Zach Ertz is super relevant this week is if Travis Kelsey is limited to like 17 FanDuel points and you just take the savings and Ertz gets to like 11.
Yeah.
And there's just not a whole lot of like, because Kelsey could, I understand the salary here, but Travis Kelsey's so dangerous because if he puts up 22, you can't make that up at a certain point
behind,
at tight end. Now the salary is different, but you know, receivers at like the 6,000 range can put up bigger games. So like you have to kind of factor that all in. Kelsey's really scary to fade this week. So I don't know if I can get to Zach Ertz.
Yeah, I don't have concerns about the Chiefs. I agree with you there. I think that that's good to be in on them for all the reasons you mentioned. As far as the bring back, like no Eagles skill position guys scored more than 16.1 FanDuel points this year. That was Devontae in week 1. The other time they topped 14 was Miles Sanders, also in week 1 against the Falcons. Like their top 3 point totals from skill position guys are all from that game. The next highest one is Zach Ertz last week against Dallas. Quez Watkins had that 91-yard catch against San Francisco. Like he had 12, but like they don't put up big games. I think Devontae is the one who can, so that's why I'll bring it back. But like, let's say this. Let's say you're doing one Chiefs lineup with Mahomes and then either Kelsey or Tyree or Kelsey or Hill. Do you run it back with Devontae or do you run it with just the single team stack and get exposure elsewhere?
Yeah, that's the issue because Smith could easily bust based on how the offense has fared. I would probably lean toward playing him though, just because I so strongly know what the data says here, and it says to play Devontae Smith and that might honestly be like a single entry approach for me.
I don't think I've had a single lineup this year where I didn't run it back, have the quarterback paired with an opposing player. I will have that this week. I will have Chiefs lineups without Devontae Smith, but I'll still have him in there. Just it's tough to talk myself into anyone else. Let's move now to your second trend. Talk about that Dallas versus Carolina game. We appreciate, we adore, we have profited off of the Dallas offense at times over the past couple of years. However, tough matchup here with Carolina. You're looking at Carolina's defense, stickiness of this stuff, and how outlier defenses stifle opposing teams.
Yeah, so in general, matchups are a bit overrated when it comes to fantasy analysis. It doesn't particularly matter if a team is like 12th against the pass compared to 22nd. It just doesn't matter a ton. What matters are the outliers, specifically on the high end. So that's why I wanted to dig in to the Panthers, because we know this game's indoors, got the high total, tight spread. We like the Cowboys offense historically, but the Panthers defense has just been really good through 3 games. numberFire has them ranked first in overall adjusted defense, first against the rush, second against the pass, which is what I'm mostly focused on. I don't care a whole lot about rush defense. Pro Football Focus has them ranked second in coverage grade. Basically anywhere you look, the Panthers defense has played really well by any measure. Now, again, I think you and I probably value matchups less than a lot of people, but we care about these outliers, and looking at the data, I'm still worried. So the question we have to keep in mind through all this is, how legit is the Panthers defense? If we think that it's not as legit, then we don't have to worry. But against top 6 pass defenses, it's kind of noteworthy. Looking at projections against top 6 pass defenses, again, going back to those quarterback ones, in terms of the pregame projections, they averaged a projection of 16.4 points per game against top 6 units, 18.3 against bottom 6 units. So again, that's all baked into things like situation, but also in this context, the pass defense. Even with that near 2-point gap in projection differential between the outliers at the top and the bottom, quarterback ones meet expectation against bottom 6 pass defenses, but still underperform by a full point against top 6 units. They are 21% likely to go for a 300-yard game against top 6 pass defenses compared to 27% outside of that sample. Passers are 47% likely to go over the yardage projection in games against non-top 6 pass defenses, but only 40% likely to do it against top 6 units. So again, we see the odds go down against these outlier defenses. Once you take that away, once it's like 7th or 8th or 9th, it doesn't matter as much. It's really like these really good defenses. So in terms of percentages, this is not ideal for Dak Prescott. Dak has played above opponent expectation this season based on his adjusted expected points per dropback. Now not running the ball a ton, 6.3 yards per game on the ground, below average ADOT of 7 yards. I initially thought I could sort of ignore this matchup because I love the game. We talked about things like quarterback popularity, but I think you said Dak was projected to be popular.
Yes, but that was also the same place where I saw that Derrick Henry is projected at 3.2%.
So
or no, that's not the exact number because I'm not going to. They're a very good site. I'm not going to put them on blast. But yeah.
So I don't have I'm not approaching this as well. Play Dak against a really good defense because nobody else would be there. We can get leverage at quarterback in virtually any way we want. But you probably know way more about defenses than I do. So is Carolina's defense this good that we should downgrade this offense, or does it not quite matter? You think it's too early? You think they're not quite good enough? What are you seeing here?
So do I think they're very good? Yes. They've got very good players scattered everywhere. So I think they're very good. Do I think we should avoid Dallas because they're good? No, I don't think so yet, because I think Carolina, there are a lot of smart people who liked Carolina's defense coming into this year, and people I respect. So I went in with the same thing thinking, okay, they'll probably be pretty good this year, but they lost JC Horn. That means that there is at least a weak spot in this defense right now. And we've seen Kellen Moore prove he is cognizant of how you should attack teams based on the way he, not only the Tampa Bay game, but also like against the Chargers and the Eagles, they were incentivized to run and they did. I don't think that'll be the incentive this week. I think the incentive will be attack those corners, attack the outside corners, try to take advantage of the JC Horn injury and see what happens. So to me, that says they're going to throw a lot more than they have the past 2 weeks. That to me says Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb are in very good spots. So I greatly respect the Carolina defense, but I'm still going to be in on Dallas here. So I think that's the way I'm viewing things for right now. So to answer your question, yes, I think that they're good. No, I don't think we should avoid Dallas quite yet. What about you?
Yeah, I'm kind of there too. So I know that the trend ultimately falls a little bit flat, but I think it's good to note long term.
Right. Especially
if we find out that they are that good, but also like Denver is actually, they're the team that ranks better in numberFire's pass defense metrics. We're not attacking Denver, and the data says that's okay. Same for Buffalo right now, which, and then New England and New Orleans, and then Arizona are the top 6. But Buffalo, Carolina, and Denver are like the 3 outliers right now. So I'm sure these numbers would get even stronger if I had like a parameter where if you're X% better than the league average, and kind of look at it from that perspective. So I think there might be 3 teams right now that says just pump the brakes: Denver, Carolina, and Buffalo. So for this week, I thought Carolina was the team to dig into just because of Dak.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I ultimately, I don't think I'm going to talk myself out of this passing offense, but I think I'll probably downgrade it from what I initially was expecting at the beginning of the week.
If I combine 2021 data with my preseason prior, Carolina is the 5th best defense in football. I project them to be the 5th best defense. That's pretty good. Yeah. And that's even with the prior still being most of that number. I had a decent prior on them. That's part of why. So I think they're a good defense, and I think they'll be sustainably good. They'll stay good, but with Dallas, I just think we can still go there. So I'll be in on Dallas.
Yeah. What do you think about Zeke? 7,000.
I don't think this is a week to use him personally. I love the way he's looked. I think his role is better than perception given how much red zone work he's getting, but I just don't think this is the week to use him because we've got Gibson right there. We've got Aaron Jones basically right there, DeAndre Swift right there. So, and Chuba Hubbard beneath him. So I'm not going to use Zeke this week. If he burns me, that's fine. I'm okay with that. I just don't think this is a week to do it personally. What about you?
Probably not, unless I end up talking myself into this game being the best of all of them, which it could, because Sam Darnold's been really good.
Yeah.
I like DJ Moore a lot. We like Hubbard, but probably...
Will you be on Robbie, given the Dan Arnold trade?
No.
Yeah. I'll probably have some in game stacks, but he's a clear distant third behind Chuba and DJ Moore. DJ Moore is going to have like a tough spot with Trayvon Diggs, but that's fine. He's good. Don't care. Okay. My second trend here is talking about running backs in games with low totals, because a lot of the best backs this week are in rough games, Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, Najee Harris, DeAndre Swift, David Montgomery, Aaron Jones, Saquon Barkley, all in games with totals under 46 points. With quarterbacks, to me, that'd be a cross-off because very rarely do we get quarterbacks out of games with a total under 48, but running back is a bit different. Last year, the average total for all games was 48.1. 40% of running backs in perfect FanDuel lineups came from games with a total of 48 or lower. So that's compared to 52% of all games having totals in that range. So running backs in those games were less likely to be in a perfect lineup than those in higher scoring games. But 40% is not nothing, and it's higher than a lot of other positions. Only 12% of quarterbacks in perfect lineups came from games with totals under 48 or 48 or lower, because one of them was exactly 48. It was 29% at wide receiver. Tight end was 41%, defense 59%. So it still mattered at running back. You still did want to prioritize high total games, but not nearly as much a quarterback and not as much as a wide receiver. To me, I think that at least gives us leeway to use these guys in lower total games if we're convinced enough by their role. Henry is fine. He gets dinged if the Titans struggle with efficiency or if the Jets can't keep up, but that's the only real pushback there. Aaron Jones, pretty easy to buy given his role. The Steelers, tough matchup, but they're not unbeatable. David Montgomery and DeAndre Swift are in a rough game, but the spread is tight, and that matters more for me at running back than the total. So how are you viewing these backs in games with lower totals? Is there anybody here you are crossing off potentially due to the nature of the game?
So I mentioned at the top of the show that I sort my all the games by over under and kind of take notes from there, just because it's like that inverted pyramid where you gotta put the most important stuff at the top. I don't really need to dig into
journalism coming out of Brandon here. Inverted pyramid.
I don't need to dig into the Saints and Giants as much as I need to dig into some of these other games. But yeah, with these lower totals, I didn't quite get there with as detailed of notes as I typically do. So some of these guys were not on my radar until I stepped outside of my detailed notes and just looked at the game and made sure I didn't overlook anybody. I'm kind of in on a lot of these names. I think Montgomery is the one I'm least interested in just because of the offense, but Swift and Jones very much in play for me. And with Derrick Henry, I think the problem is the salary's so high for me, the offensive expectations. Yeah. So among the list that you mentioned at the top, I will have DeAndre Swift, Aaron Jones. I guess maybe that's actually it.
You'll use Derrick Henry.
Oh yeah, I'll use Derrick Henry, but he's not a core play.
Yeah, I think if we're talking about cross-offs, like Kamara, I'm okay not being super high on. I'm okay not being super high on Barkley. The passing offense for New Orleans is kind of killing Alvin Kamara, which sounds weird for a running back, but that's where he gets a lot of his values via pass catching, and they're just not throwing. So it really hurts him, I think. So I think that this allows me to justify Swift at his salary. He is $7,700, but he ranks 5th on the slate in adjusted opportunities per game, whereas he's 6th in salary. He is 3rd in yards per game, yards from scrimmage per game, behind Henry and Dalvin. He has a decent red zone role. Dan Campbell has said we'll see more of him, so I can get to Swift for sure. Okay. I like Aaron Jones a lot. I rank Jones above Swift due to the offenses, but I would say, Kamara and Barkley are the two I'll lop off there. But Swift, Jones, Henry, and Swift, Jones, and Henry, guys I'm okay with. So let's take a look at some. Oh, go ahead.
So no Najee. Were you kind of deciding here?
At that salary, I'm okay.
Okay.
What about you?
I'm with you, yeah.
Okay. Weather for this week, we do have some spots where rain could impact things. For me personally, I don't care too much about rain unless it's a downpour or if it comes with heavy winds. So keep in mind, rain is not a massive, massive red flag for us. The places with potential rain are Philadelphia for the Eagles and Chiefs, New Jersey for the Jets and Giants, Chicago for the Bears and Lions, potentially Arlington eventually for Chicago games, Buffalo for the Bills and Titans. Those are the games with potential rain. The only one in that group with noteworthy wind is Bills and Texans. I said Titans, the Bills and Texans. That's at 11-mile-per-hour winds right now, so nothing super restrictive yet, but check back on that later. The one what does have wind with no rain is in Miami for the Colts and Dolphins. So, Brandon, your Jacoby Brissett revenge game lineups have been burned. I'm sorry. You had a good run, but we got to move on from those. So, check back on the win for that one for all of your Jacoby Brissett, Devontae Parker stacks. Let's move now to our position by position breakdown, outlining our favorite options for this week over on FanDuel.com. Brandon, who are you in on for week number 4 on FanDuel?
Patrick Mahomes, 8,700, has 24.9 FanDuel points or more in all 3 games, but somehow doesn't feel like he's erupted, probably because of the losses. We may worry that Philadelphia trails, but I've been saying it all show. Chiefs are 1-2. They need to get back on track. That's going to flow through Patrick Mahomes. I know it's a bit subjective. I would feel differently if they were undefeated. I would say maybe they don't need to run it up, but Mahomes averaging 313 yards per game, 3 touchdowns. Very, very good relative to expectation. No issues there. My second love, honestly, should be Kyler Murray, but for right now, it's Russell Wilson at 7,700. I know that I did talk about passing matchups with Dak and Carolina, but it's different once you get outside those outliers. San Francisco ranked 9th against the pass, according to numberFire, and it's the first time around for this divisional matchup. Russ has put up 298 yards per game, 9.5 yard ADOT, which is like 2 full yards better than the league average. We know where the ball's going. It's going to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. They've combined for 56% of the targets and 80% of the air yards. You can't really overstate how important it is to be able to hit on the right stacks once your quarterback hits. Like if your quarterback has a big game and you know where the ball's going, that has inherent and immense value.
I acknowledge that while saying Kyler Murray is my top love. What could go wrong? It is a tough matchup. Just not sure if that matters for him because we did see Tom Brady. I know a lot of it was late, but he moved the ball against the Rams, 0.32 passing net expected points per dropback in that game. He was at 0.17 against the Cowboys and the Falcons. We've not seen a nuclear Kyler rushing performance yet, but he still has 34 plus points twice. Scored 19.5 last week with no passing touchdowns. So I hope he goes overlooked because of the matchup. I would understand that for sure because the Rams have a lot of good dudes still, but I think that there's enough turnover here given the Brandon Staley departure where I'm okay using Kyler Murray despite the tough matchup. I think that he's really good. I'll go with Dak number 2. I know the matchup is tough, but they've also faced Zach Wilson, Davis Mills, and Jameis Winston. Wilson actually did move the ball against them in the second half. Like the second half of that game was probably the best Wilson has played this year so far. Now there's no JC Horn. Dak's at home where he tends to just go absolutely bananas. So they're not going to be able to coast and just run the ball this time. I do like Russ a lot. I do think that Matthew Stafford is in play. We've not talked about him yet. I think that Stafford is pretty solid this week too, but I really do want to get to Dak despite the tough matchup with Carolina. Do you have a question there?
No.
I think you're going to ask something.
Nope.
Okay, cool. Let's move down to your running back. What do you have there?
I'm going to go with the Vikings. With either Dalvin Cook at 9,500 or Alexander Madison at 6,800. If Dalv plays, it's going to be Dalv. If not, it's going to be Madison. Cook has averaged 31 adjusted opportunities, which is your carries plus 2x targets, on a 73% snap rate with 5 targets per game, 44% route rate. If he's healthy, going to play Dalvin. If not, Madison would be in line for another big workload. 42 adjusted opportunities last week, 67% snap rate, 44% route rate, 5 red zone carries. Like the game. So it's going to be one of the two. My second love is going to be Antonio Gibson, which is kind of strange for me because I'm usually fairly low on Gibson just because of the third down work, but hard to envision the Falcons pouring it on any defense, especially one that has at least the ability to be good, even though Washington hasn't been great to start the year. This game is first in pace, 6th in pass rate on the main slate. According to my numbers, pass rate helps for efficiency, so I want that. Taylor Heineke has at least been fine enough. He's not a massive negative, so I'm okay with that, especially against such an easy defense. Gibson, again, like not always my guy because he plays 60% of the snaps the past 2 weeks with Heineke starting, but Atlanta's 25th in rushing success rate allowed to running backs, so I feel pretty good here. with the game and with Gibson not being phased out. And my third love kind of has to be, I think, Chuba Hubbard, especially because we don't know the status of Darrell Henderson yet. Sony Michel would definitely make this list if we knew. But Hubbard at 6,300 should just have a really good workload. Dallas 22nd in rushing success rate allowed to running backs. The 11 carries, 5 targets last week. Almost half of the routes, 56% of the snaps, 3 red zone carries and 2 red zone targets. We might be tilting that Royce Freeman gets like some goal line work. That's kind of the biggest drawback, but that's really the only drawback here.
Yeah, I think that with Hubbard, I don't have as many concerns as others may, I guess, just because the role was so good after McCaffrey left. And like it was Hubbard who was in the point scoring situations because he had 39% of the red zone chances last week, and that includes the entire game. Now, Hubbard has not been great. His success rate is 32%, whereas McCaffrey's at 42%, but Royce Freeman, I'm pretty sure, is at like 20. So I don't know if pivoting to Royce Freeman is going to be a positive there for Carolina. So Chuba Hubbard, one of my loves as well. I still like him given how desirable this game is. It's not a perfect situation. Like it's not a 100% Saquon Barkley situation like we had last week, but I think that it's fine enough to feel good about him here. I also, the Vikings guys is one of my loves, whoever it may be. I want running backs in tight games, and this is very much that. Across Dalvin's 2 games, 126 yards per game. He has 44% of the red zone chances. In Madison last week, 171 yards, 44% of the red zone chances. Like whoever is the running back there will be in my lineups a lot. I did consider Antonio Gibson as my other love. I went to Aaron Jones. I have him slightly above Gibson, but I do think Gibson is a very good option this week. Jones has a good role this year if you ignore the New Orleans blowout, which I think you should. In his past 2 games, he has 26 adjusted opportunities per game, which is, again, carries plus 2x targets, 106 yards in scrimmage per game, 59% of the red zone chances in those 2 games. So he has a stupid role. The matchup is scary, but he's $7,400. So I think that he's fine. I think that Aaron Jones is a core play for me this week, despite facing the Steelers. Any thoughts for you on Aaron Jones? I gave mine on Gibson there. So any thoughts for you on Jones?
Yeah, I like him. I think he's kind of the 1A or 1B between he and Gibson in that $7,000 range. Running back usually is where you and I really fixate. I'm not saying this is a week where I would flex a receiver. I don't feel quite that bad about running back, but I don't feel like locked into many guys.
Well, I think the one thing you could say is like if you look at the 7,000 range, like the wide receivers there. Let's go in the 7,000 range. You can use Aaron Jones, who we like, DeAndre Swift, who we like, Antonio Gibson, or you can use DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley, Terry McLaurin. I think that's at least a consideration.
Yeah,
it's a question rather than a certainty that you're going running back.
Yeah,
let's go to receiver. Who you got there?
DJ Moore.
There we go.
There are a lot of good receivers just to allocate a lot of salary on, but DJ Moore, I think, has a really good role that probably is understated because he hasn't scored yet. Love this game, despite any concerns that we might have about Carolina's defense. It's 5th in pace, 1st in pass rate. You like to see that. Moore's at a 31% target share overall, 41% of the air yards, 2.3 downfield targets per game. I mean, eventually he's got to have some touchdown regression. He's one of the biggest outliers in negative touchdown expectation over the past 3 years. Had 92% of the routes, 36% of the targets, 54% of the air yards, 3 downfield targets last week with Christian McCaffrey leaving early. You love that. Love the game. Second love, Odell Beckham, 6,600. Salary's very justifiable for the role. 63% of the snaps, 81% of the routes last week in a very positive script. 31% of the targets with 7 total. 51% of the team's air yards, including 4 downfield targets, 144 total air yards. Playing indoors, like the game, key part of mini stacks, key part of bringing it back with Dalvin Cook. And then my third love is, I think, going to be Devontae Smith at 5,900. There's a lot of risk, but we like this game. And Kansas City's 29th overall against the pass, 23rd against the deep pass, 28th in adjusted FanDuel points per target allowed to receivers. Smith's at a 22% target share, 43% of the air yards. He's got almost a 15-yard ADOT and running 93% of the routes. it's really hard to envision a scenario where they don't have to throw the ball a lot. I know they need to convert, like Devontae Smith has to convert eventually, but he can't just not catch any of these deep targets forever. Right?
Maybe.
Right?
I'm going to use him this week, so I'm fine with him. Just, I wouldn't say it's a certainty. My first level receiver is DK Metcalf because the 49ers corners are really beat up right now, and Tyler Lockett might not be at full health himself. Metcalf this year has 32% of the overall targets, 44% of the deep targets, and 60% in the red zone. That's an insane role. He has a very good floor, tremendous upside, and a really fun game. So DK Metcalf, to me, is my primary priority within that 7,000 range. My second love is kind of not a wide receiver, but it's Cordarrelle Patterson because he's low salaried access to a pretty fun game. The traditional checklist for me at wide receiver is they need to be able to get you either 85 yards or 2 touchdowns to make a perfect lineup. Cordarrelle has 2 touchdowns in one game this year and 100 and something yards in another. So he's gotten there twice in 3 games. He's averaging 79.3 yards per game. He's played 61% of the red zone snaps the past 2 weeks compared to Mike Davis at 44%. That role is not certain to stick. So I don't think Cordarrelle Patterson's like a cash game play, but I think that he is a guy I'm okay having 30-ish% of in tournaments and feeling okay about it just because the role is good enough, I think, to justify that. You get a running back at wide receiver. I think that's like Wan'Dale Robinson back in the day when he was with Nebraska. Oh man, those were the days in college football DFS. Just great stuff right there. My third love is Brandon Ayuk. Question mark. His role bounced back last week. Ran a bunch of routes. 6 total targets. 3 of those were in the red zone, which is kind of where he feasts. One of those was deep. George Kittle missed practice Wednesday. Doesn't sound like a big concern, but worth noting. That could free up more targets in this offense. I have a strong inclination towards Deebo Samuel. Love him in this game, but there's also a $1,200 salary gap between these two guys. So I think among the guys in the 5,000 range of wide receiver, I kind of think that Ayuk might be my favorite, potentially by a hair over Devontae Smith, but Devontae Smith also right there. I do like AJ Green. As upsetting, disturbing, disgruntling. And KJ Osborne, I will have some sprinkles of again, despite last week being deaf. Let's go to tight end. What do you got there?
Yeah, I think I'm back in on Ayuk, but I'm going to say George Kittle here, although it really should just be Travis Kelce because I'm going to build around Kelce. But I think George Kittle, we don't need to talk about Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
George Kittle, I think his role is at least a standout relative to everyone other than Kelce. 100% of the snaps last week with Ayuk's role back, 75% of the routes, 9 targets plus a downfield target, led the team in air yards. Seattle is 25th in adjusted FanDuel points per target allowed to tight ends. Like the game, Kittle is going to be part of those stacks. And then my second love at tight end, Mike Gesicki, 5,400. Again, I considered Zach Ertz, but I'm going to go with Gesicki. He got 12 targets from Jacoby Brissett last week, so there's that. Had 86 yards on them. Not every tight end has some yardage upside, but Gesicki's athletic enough to do it. And even if he's not for whatever reason, the volume's there. So that's something. And Indianapolis is 24th in adjusted FanDuel points per target allowed to tight ends so far. So I think you could do worse than Gesicki.
I do think the salary is good on Kittle at 67. I think that I will be there, and I think he's a good part of game stacks too. But yeah, I think that works. My first one was Tyler Higbee, again, getting access to a fun game. He missed some snaps last week because he was cramping, but those are the only snaps he's missed all year, or when he was cramping. Still had 5 targets there. It's not the best overall role, but he has a clear path to a big game. He gets me access to a very good passing offense. It's a game I want to stack. So I'll go back to Higbee this week, even with the role not being fully optimized. My second love is Logan Thomas. He hasn't blown up yet, but this is easily their best game environment thus far. The Falcons haven't been too bad while facing relevant tight ends like Rob Gronkowski and the Eagles guys, but Thomas, the clear number 2 passing option in this offense. He has 16% of the overall targets. He has 3 deep targets, 3 in the red zone. I think that his role is fine, and it's access to a good game. So I'll go with Higbee and Thomas as my loves at tight end. Let's move now to defense. Brandon, what do you have there?
I got the Chiefs at 3,700. I know they're not a great defense right now in terms of like the passing efficiency and literally everything, but they should play from ahead. That should lead to sacks and potentially picks. Jalen Hurts does have just a 5% sack rate right now. But 60% of FanDuel points, I say this a lot, come from sacks and interceptions. So I don't care if Philly scores points. If Kansas City is going to be playing from ahead, I like that. Then I'd also consider both of the defenses. Speaking of pace and pass rate, in the Atlanta and Washington game, Atlanta's 3,600 and Washington's 4,000.
Yeah. I think that the Chiefs are interesting. I know that, again, like you said, Hurts doesn't take a lot of sacks, which is good. He has historically, like in college, he took a lot of sacks.
Yeah.
But also the Chiefs just got Frank Clark, Chris Jones practiced on Wednesday in a limited fashion, but they practiced, which is good. Jordan Mailata still not practicing for the Eagles. Their left tackle, their guards are both going to be out for this game. So, and Landon Dickerson's not fully healthy either. Their backup guard. So he's very good, but he's, not their starter. So there are enough injuries there where I have concerns about the Eagles offense. My love is Dallas in the spots where I don't use either Chuba or DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson. I really don't mind them at $3,800. They rank 8th in overall defense through 3 weeks based on numberFire's metrics. The Panthers' offensive line is hideous. I know we haven't seen, Jameis Darnold flashback up yet this year, but he's still in there somewhere. We get Sam Darnold a negative script. We have the recipe for Dallas's defense to be good. And we have not seen Sam Darnold run a snap from behind yet this year. So we have not seen the recipe for Jameis Darnold yet, but I think that he still lurks down there deep inside. So I think the Dallas defense, pretty solid turn option for this week, despite the fact that I think that game is stackable and not terribly too bad. That is all that we have here for today on the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, but still plenty of NFL stuff to come here across all of our platforms. Today, Brandon will be previewing Thursday Night Football between the Bengals and the Jaguars. That is at 4 p.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages, breaking down the single game slate there. Our snake draft for week number 4 is on Friday at 4. Brandon won this past week. Boo. So we're all tied up at 1 apiece. We'll break that tie this week, 4 to 4:30 on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages. Brandon, any final thoughts for you on this week 4 main slate?
We spent an hour and 20 minutes talking about this slate, and I am starting to kind of formulate where I want to be. But I think going back to what I said earlier, I'm going to try to figure out where the public is and just go with the games that are getting overlooked, because not all the games are going to be as popular as each other. So right. I feel good with that route.
Okay. I think that is a fair way to do it. I need to sort out the mid-range running backs. It's my main task. I think it's Aaron Jones and Gibson, but still more work to be done there to decide how I want to play things. That is all that we have here for today. Make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts, UFC, NASCAR, MLB podcasts, all coming up on Friday to get you set for Friday and this weekend. Hit subscribe. Also leave us a rating and review if you like what you hear. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
I'm at Gadula13, GDULA13.
And I'm at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. If you want to watch me celebrate Baker Mayfield's victory over Taylor Heineke this upcoming Sunday, which is sure to be a delight. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. We'll talk to you once again on Monday to wrap it all up. Looking forward to it going some cash in week number 4. Don't forget the Listener League, FanDuel.com/league/Listener League. This has been Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire.